The Interstellar Council chamber was older than most stars humans had ever studied. Its walls curved in slow spirals, layered with crystal and metal from dozens of worlds. Light did not come from lamps, but from the walls themselves, glowing softly in colors that shifted with the emotions of the beings inside. On this day, the colors were tense: sharp blues, tight whites, uneasy gold. Hundreds of representatives filled the chamber. Some floated in gravity fields. Others sat on platforms shaped for bodies that did not bend like humans. A few existed as shimmering shapes held together by technology and will. At the center stood the council ring, a smooth circle where decisions were spoken into law. High Envoy, Sealith of the Virene, stood alone within the ring. She was tall and slender, her form elegant and still. Her skin shimmered like moonlit glass, faint lines of light moving beneath it like slow rivers. The Virene were one of the oldest spacefaring species in the galaxy. They were known for calm logic, long planning, and strict traditions, especially when it came to bonding. Today, Salith was expected to complete one of the most important duties of her long life. The chamber quieted as the council speaker, an ancient being wrapped in layers of hovering symbols, addressed her. "High Envoy Salith," the speaker said, voice echoing gently. "The council has gathered to witness your chosen bond. This union will help stabilize the trihelix systems and guide interstellar relations for the next cycle. You may now name your intended mate." This moment had been planned for decades. Names had been studied, genetic matches calculated, political outcomes mapped across centuries. The council already believed it knew the answer. Salith was expected to choose one of three candidates, powerful figures from respected species, each approved through endless review. The Salith did not move right away. Her gaze drifted across the chamber, past the elders, past the observers, past the floating record keepers. It settled instead on a small delegation seated near the outer ring. The human delegation. They were new by council standards. Humanity had joined the wider galaxy less than 100 standard years ago. They were still considered a developing species, useful, curious, sometimes loud, but not influential. One of them stood out. Elias Rowan sat quietly, hands folded, posture straight but not stiff. He wore a simple uniform with no decorations, no marks of rank. His hair was dark, slightly unkempt, and his expression was calm in a way that did not demand attention. He was there as a cultural liaison, nothing more. Salith turned back to the council. "I have made my choice," she said. The light in the chamber paused as if holding its breath. "I choose Elias Rowan," Salith continued. "Of Earth, of the human species." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the chamber exploded into sound. Gasps echoed from dozens of species. Light patterns flared, bright and chaotic. Several delegates rose from their platforms in shock. A ripple of disbelief spread so strongly that even the walls pulsed erratically. The council speaker froze. "Repeat," the speaker said slowly. Silas' voice did not change. "I choose Elias Rowan as my mate." The human delegation stiffened as one. Elias looked up sharply, his calm expression breaking for the first time. Confusion crossed his face, followed by something quieter, shock mixed with sudden understanding. He did not speak. He did not move. Whispers surged through the chamber. "A human? That species is untested. This violates precedent. They do not bond correctly." A tall delegate from the Phyrexian clans struck the floor with a jointed limb. "This is impossible," it declared. Humans lack the neural harmony required for Virene bonding. They are short-lived, emotionally unstable, and politically insignificant. Sealith turned her head slightly toward the Phyrexian, her glowing eyes calm. "You mistake difference for weakness," she said. The council speaker raised a signaling field, restoring partial order. "High Envoy," it said carefully. This council recognizes your authority. However, this choice challenges established law. A projection flared to life above the ring, displaying ancient symbols. Interstellar Code, Article 17. Bonded unions affecting multi-system governance must meet compatibility and stability standards. Saleth nodded once. I am aware. Then you must explain, the speaker said, how a human meets those standards. Baleth paused. Across the chamber, Elias felt every gaze settle on him. He had attended council meetings before, but always as background, a note-taker. An observer. Never like this. His heart beat steadily. He reminded himself to breathe. Saleth spoke again. The Vareen do not bond by genetics alone, she said. We bond by resonance. Several elders shifted uneasily. Resonance of what? Asked a crystalline delegate. Of will, Saleth replied. Of choice. Of continuity. The council speaker dimmed slightly.
Explain. Saley folded her hands before her. My species has outlived stars because we plan far ahead.
We choose mates who will endure in purpose, not merely in body. In my centuries of service, I have studied dozens of species. Many are powerful, many are ancient, few endure change. She gestured subtly toward the human delegation. Humans do. A low murmur followed. A delegate from the Erowin Collective pulsed in disagreement. Humans fracture internally. They argue. They fail. They rebuild endlessly.
Yes, Saleth said. They do. Her gaze returned to Elias.
They choose again, she continued. Again and again. Even when it costs them. The chamber quieted, not in agreement, but in attention. The council speaker turned slightly toward the human delegation. Elias Rowan, it said. Do you understand what is being proposed? Elias stood. He felt smaller than he ever had, standing among beings who measured time in millennia. Still, his voice was steady. I understand that High Envoy Sielith has named me, he said. I did not expect this, but I respect her choice. That was all. No speeches, no defense, no ambition. The simplicity unsettled the chamber more than protest would have. A tall avian delegate leaned forward. Human, it said, what do you gain from this union? Elias considered the question. Partnership, he answered, if she still wants it. A few delegates flickered with surprise. And power? Another asked. I don't need it, Elias said. If I'm trusted, that's enough. Saleth's glow brightened slightly. The council speaker conferred silently with several elders, streams of data flowing between them. After a moment, it spoke. This council cannot approve this union without review, it declared. The implications are vast. Humanity's role would change. Power balances would shift. Saleth inclined her head. Then review it. And during this review, the speaker continued, this union will be considered provisional. Elias felt a flicker of tension, but Saleth's posture did not change. There is another matter, the speaker said. By naming a human, you have forced a question this council has avoided. Whether humanity itself is suitable for deeper integration. The chamber dimmed slightly. Saleth's voice was calm. That question will be answered. The speaker raised a formal seal. An emergency evaluation is hereby declared. Humanity will be examined under council law. Elias Rowan will serve as representative subject. A pause. Proceed with care, the speaker added. The galaxy will be watching. The session ended in controlled chaos. Delegates departed in clusters, speaking rapidly in their own forms of communication. Pedantim, observers transmitted updates across light years. Rumors began spreading before the chamber fully emptied. Elias remained standing until Saleth stepped closer. I did not ask you first, she said quietly. so only he could hear. Elias met her glowing eyes. "You trusted me enough to choose me," he said. "That counts for something." Selah studied him for a long moment. "Yes," she said softly. "It does." As they left the chamber together, the walls shifted color, not with fear, but with something new. Uncertainty. And far beyond the council's ancient halls, messages raced across the stars, carrying a single, shocking truth. A human had been chosen, and nothing in the galaxy would stay the same. The news spread faster than any ship could travel. Within hours of the council session ending, every major world in known space was talking about the same thing. A Varine High Envoy had chosen a human mate. Not a general, not a ruler, not even a scientist of great fame, just a quiet liaison from a young species. On Earth, the message arrived in layers of translation, legal warnings, and diplomatic language. By the time it reached public channels, it had already shaken governments. Humanity was under review. Elias Rowan sat in a small, carefully prepared room aboard the council station, staring at a floating display that showed his own life in clean, emotionless lines. Education records, mission logs, psychological evaluations, even childhood notes pulled from Earth archives with council permission. He felt exposed in a way he never had before. Across from him, a group of observers watched in silence. They were not hostile, but neither were they friendly. Their forms varied, light-based beings, solid-bodied species, even a pair of artificial intelligences, housed in smooth metal frames. They were here to study him, and through him, all of humanity. "Subject Elias Rowan," a voice said, calm and neutral. "This evaluation is not a trial. It is an assessment. Your honesty is expected." Elias nodded. "I understand." The voice continued. "Humans are known to value emotion highly. Please explain the role emotion plays in your decision-making." Elias thought for a moment. "It depends," he said. "Emotion tells us what matters, but it doesn't always decide what we do." A soft ripple passed through the observers. "Clarify," the voice requested. Elias leaned back slightly. "Fear tells us when something is dangerous. Care tells us when something is worth protecting. But we still choose how to act. Emotion isn't the boss."
"It's information." Several recorders adjusted.
Elsewhere on the station, Salith stood before a different group of evaluators. Unlike Elias, she was not being questioned about herself. She was being questioned about her species' judgment. "You risk destabilizing interstellar order," said an elder delegate. "Why choose a variable so unpredictable?" Salith's answer was immediate. "Because the galaxy is already unstable." The elder flickered in irritation.
"Explain." "Old systems are failing," Salith said. "Rigid alliances break when conditions change."
Species bound only by tradition fracture when tradition no longer serves reality. "And humans?" the elder asked. "They adapt," Salith replied. "Even when it hurts." The elder paused. "Adaptation without direction leads to chaos." Salith's eyes glowed brighter, not when guided by choice. Back in Elias's evaluation, the questions grew more personal. "How do humans form bonds?" one observer asked. Elias smiled faintly. "Messily." "Define," the observer said. "We don't have one system," Elias explained. "Some bonds are built on family, some on shared struggle, some on promises, and some just happen." "And when bonds are threatened?" the observer asked. Elias's smile faded. "We fight for them," he said. "Not always smartly. Not always successfully. But we don't let go easily." A pause followed. Another observer spoke. Records show humans often form attachments across cultural, ideological, and even species boundaries. That's true, Elias said. Why? Elias shrugged slightly. Because connection matters more than similarity. The observers exchanged silent signals. Throughout the station, similar scenes played out. Human history was examined piece by piece. Wars were noted, but so were recoveries. Failures were highlighted, but so were reforms. Again and again, one pattern kept appearing. Humans broke, and humans rebuilt. A council analyst summarized it privately. They do not optimize for perfection. They optimize for continuation. On Earth, public reaction was chaotic. Some celebrated. Some panicked. Some accused Elias of being a pawn or a symbol forced onto him. Elias's family was placed under protection not because of threats, but because of attention. Elias himself had no contact with Earth during the evaluation. Council rules required isolation to prevent influence. He didn't mind as much as he thought he would. Salith visited him once per cycle, brief meetings approved by observers. During one such visit, they stood near a transparent wall that looked out into open space. Stars drifted slowly beyond, distant and cold.
"You are under pressure," Salith said. "So are you?" Elias replied. She inclined her head.
Yes? He hesitated. Why me? Salith did not answer right away. When I first observed humanity, she said, I expected chaos. I expected ambition without restraint. And? Elias asked. I found restraint without certainty, she said. You act without knowing the outcome. You commit without guarantees. That sounds dangerous, Elias said. It is, Salith agreed, which is why it matters. Elias looked out at the stars. You know the council is scared.
Yes? Of humans? He asked.
Of what humans make possible,
Salith corrected.
The evaluation reached its next phase.
Instead of questions, Elias was placed in simulations. Non-violent, but complex. Scenarios involving negotiation, moral conflict, and loss. In each, he was observed closely. In one simulation, he was offered a personal advantage if he abandoned a virtual ally. He refused. In another, saving a group required breaking a rule. He broke it, then accepted the consequences. The observers noted that Elias consistently chose people over systems, but did not reject systems entirely. He bends, one analyst observed, but does not collapse. Salith faced her own tests. Council members challenged her logic, her data, even her emotional state.
You are compromised, one accused. I am committed, Salith replied. Your people value distance, another said. This is closeness.
Yes, Salith said, and it strengthens resolve. As cycles passed, something unexpected happened. Other species began paying closer attention to humanity. Not through reports, but through memory. They recalled human crews that stayed when others left, human medics who treated allies and rivals the same, human engineers who fixed problems that were not theirs to fix. Small things. Quiet things, but consistent. A delegate from a long isolated species requested a human observer to understand perspective. Another asked for human mediators in a trade dispute. The council noticed. So did those who opposed the union. A closed session was called. No humans present. No observers allowed beyond the highest clearance. The evaluation is shifting, one council member said. This was meant to judge suitability. Instead, it is revealing deficiencies in our own structures. That is not the purpose, another replied sharply. Purpose changes, Salith said calmly. The speaker remained silent for a long time before speaking. Humanity does not fit our categories, it said. They are neither stable nor unstable by our metrics. Then the metrics are flawed, Salith said. Silence followed. When Elias was finally called before the council again, the chamber felt different, less hostile, more uncertain. The speaker addressed him directly.
Elias Rowan, it said, this council has studied your species closely.
You do not dominate. You do not submit easily. You persist. Elias listened quietly.
You form bonds that outlast logic, the speaker continued. This is unusual. Elias nodded.
We're aware.
A faint ripple of something like amusement passed through the chamber. The evaluation is not complete, the speaker said.
Ooh.
But its direction is clear. Salith stepped forward, standing beside Elias once more. The galaxy is changing, she said. Humans did not cause that. They respond to it. The speaker's symbols shifted.
There will be resistance, it warned. There always is, Elias said gently.
The chamber dimmed, then brightened again.
Prepare for the next phase,
the speaker announced. The decision ahead will define more than a union. As Elias and Salith left together, observers watched them closely, not as curiosities, but as indicators of a future no one fully understood. Somewhere deep within the Council's ancient systems, a simple conclusion was forming. Humanity was not being tested anymore. Humanity was being considered. The next phase began without warning. Elias woke to soft light filling his quarters, brighter than the usual cycle glow. A message hovered in the air, marked with Council priority. He read it once, then again, feeling a quiet weight settle in his chest. He was no longer only a subject. He was now a reference. Across the station, council chambers, research halls, and diplomatic lounges adjusted their schedules. Humans were being invited, carefully, politely, into spaces they had never entered before, not as petitioners, not as guests. As examples, Elias walked through corridors where conversations paused when he passed, not out of fear, but attention, the kind that tried to understand something unfamiliar without breaking it. Salith met him near one of the observation galleries. Her presence still drew notice, but now the looks were different. Less shock, more calculation. They are watching how you walk, Elias said quietly as they moved together. They are watching how you respond, Salith replied. Movement is less important. The gallery overlooked a wide circular hall. In the center stood a group of representatives from various species. Among them were 3 humans, an engineer, a medic, and a diplomat. All were calm, all slightly tense.
This is new, Elias said. Yes, Salith agreed.
This is exposure. The Council had decided that data alone was insufficient. Humanity would now be observed in interaction, not isolation. Humans would be placed into existing interspecies processes, not to lead, not to dominate, but to participate. To see what happened. The first session was a mediation. 2 species had been locked in a resource dispute for decades, not openly hostile, but endlessly stalled. Negotiations cycled, failed, reset, and failed again. The Council introduced a human mediator, Dr. Lena Varma, former disaster response coordinator from Earth. She listened more than she spoke. Observers noted how she asked questions that were not in the briefing, how she repeated statements back to their speakers, not to argue, but to confirm understanding, how she acknowledged frustration without agreeing to demands. The session ended without resolution, but it ended without escalation. That alone drew attention. In another hall, a human engineer worked alongside a multi-species team to stabilize an aging energy array. The design was foreign, built on principles humans had never used. The engineer did not try to replace it. He adapted. He learned just enough to reinforce weak points, documenting everything so the original builders could maintain it later. He does not claim ownership, one observer noted. He claims responsibility, another replied. Elias watched these sessions through shared feeds, feeling a strange mix of pride and distance. These were his people, but they were not performing for him. They were simply being themselves. That, he realized, was the point. The council began inviting Elias into discussions, not as a witness, but as a voice. Always carefully framed, always option. He accepted each invitation. In one meeting, a delegate asked him directly, "Why do humans continue to help others when no obligation exists?" Elias considered the question. "Because one day," he said, "we might need help too, and we hope someone remembers." "That is not efficient," the delegate replied. "No," Elias agreed, "but it works longer." Salith watched these exchanges closely. She noticed how Elias never raised his voice, never tried to impress. He spoke only when he felt something needed to be said. That restraint carried weight. Not everyone approved. A faction within the council grew more vocal. They argued that humans were influencing outcomes simply by presence, that their emotional transparency disrupted established hierarchies. "They make others reconsider," one elder complained. "That is the danger," another agreed. Salith addressed them directly in a closed session. "You fear reflection," she said calmly. "Humans provide it. We fear instability," the elder replied. Salith tilted her head.
"Then you should study why humans stabilize each other after collapse."
The room fell quiet. Elias faced his own test during a public forum. A respected elder from a long-lived species asked him a question broadcast across council networks. "Human," the elder said, "your species forms bonds easily, yet your history shows you break them just as often. Why should the galaxy trust your loyalty?" The silence that followed was heavy. Elias did not rush his answer. "We fail," he said. "A lot. We betray each other. We make excuses. We forget lessons." He paused. "But we also remember guilt. And we try again. Loyalty isn't something we're born with. It's something we rebuild." The elders studied him.
"That sounds exhausting."
"It is," Elias said. "But it's worth it." The broadcast ended shortly after. Reaction was mixed, but strong. Some species dismissed his words as emotional rhetoric. Others quietly archived them for review. A few replayed the recording again and again, analyzing tone and pause. On Earth, the message spread quickly, not as propaganda, but as something shared between people.
"He sounds like us," someone commented. "That's the point," another replied.
The council speaker convened a rare and formal gathering. No seals, no official records, just representatives and observers. "We are witnessing a pattern," the speaker said. "Humans do not seek to replace structures. They inhabit them and change them," a delegate added. "Yes," the speaker said, "by existing within them." Salith stood near Elias, her presence steady. "They do not demand space," she said. "They fill gaps." The speaker's symbols dimmed thoughtfully. As cycles passed, something subtle but undeniable occurred. Other species began adopting small human practices. Mediation sessions started with shared context instead of demands. Engineering teams documented failures openly. Diplomatic meetings allowed pauses instead of constant pressure. No one called these human methods. They simply worked. Elias felt the shift most clearly during a visit to a memorial chamber, one dedicated to extinct civilizations. The species that had failed to adapt, failed to bond, failed to change. A young delegate stood beside him, studying the displays. "Your species is young," the delegate said. "Too young to understand loss like this." Elias looked at the records. We've lost worlds, he said. We just...
Keep going. Why? The delegate asked.
Elias answered quietly. Because stopping doesn't bring anything back. The delegate nodded slowly. Resistance reached its peak when a formal motion was introduced. The council would vote on whether humanity should be granted provisional elevated status, allowing humans broader participation in governance and mediation. The debate was intense. They will influence policy through empathy, one argued. They already do, another replied. And that frightens you, Saleth said. Elias was not allowed to speak during the debate. He sat beside Saleth, hands folded, listening as the galaxy argued about his species as an idea rather than a people. He felt anger once. He let it pass. When the session ended without a vote, the council announced a delay, more observation, more data. Elias expected frustration. Instead, he felt something else. Momentum. Later, alone with Saleth, he voiced it. They're not ready, he said.
No,
Saleth agreed.
but they are no longer certain.
That's enough? Elias asked.
For now, she said. She looked at him carefully.
Do you regret this? Elias thought of Earth, of his family, of the quiet life he might never return to. No, he said. I just didn't expect being human to matter this much. Saleth's glow softened. It always mattered, she said. The galaxy simply hadn't noticed. Far from the council station, requests continued to arrive. Human advisors, human mediators, human observers, not because they were powerful, but because they stayed. The shift did not come loudly. There were no alarms, no sudden declarations, no dramatic confrontations. Instead, it arrived quietly, disguised as concern, wrapped in tradition, and spoken in careful words. Fear had found its language. Elias noticed it first in the pauses. Conversations that once flowed, now hesitated. Invitations still came, but with more conditions. Observers still watched, but their questions changed. Less curiosity, more caution. The council was no longer asking what humans could offer. They were asking what humans might change. A closed session was announced, restricted to senior council members and select envoys. Elias was not invited. Neither were most human representatives. Saleth was. When she returned from the session, her glow was dimmer than usual. They are invoking tradition, Elias said quietly as they walked together through a long corridor. Yes, Saleth replied. When reason becomes uncomfortable, tradition is used as shelter. He nodded. What are they saying? That humans bond too deeply, she said. That your attachments override objectivity. That your loyalty creates imbalance. Elias let out a slow breath. They're afraid we won't let go. They are afraid you won't abandon, Saleth corrected. That distinction mattered. The next day, the council issued a formal statement. It was broadcast across all networks, carefully worded and endlessly analyzed. Human emotional bonding was declared a potential destabilizing factor in long-term governance. No accusations, no condemnations. Just doubt. Several species supported the statement immediately. Others hesitated. A few quietly objected, but not loudly enough to shift momentum. The evaluation entered what the council called a cautionary phase. Human participation was not revoked, but limited. Advisory roles remained, but leadership opportunities were paused. Mediation requests required additional approval. Elias watched the effects ripple outward. A human mediator was removed from a negotiation for balance. A human engineer's recommendation was delayed for further review. A human medical team was asked to step back so a neutral species could take over. Nothing was said openly, but humans felt it. So did others. In one shared lounge, Elias overheard a non-human delegate speaking softly to a colleague. "They make it harder to pretend we don't care," the delegate said.
"That is the problem," the colleague replied.
Salith requested the floor during a full council assembly. This time, the chamber was tense in a different way. Not shocked, not curious, defensive.
"You claim to act in the name of stability," Salith said, her voice calm but firm. "Yet stability built on distance is not stability." "It is delay," a senior elder responded.
"We have maintained order for millennia,
"And lost countless civilizations along the way," Salith replied.
not to war, to isolation." The elder pulsed sharply. "Humans accelerate attachment. Attachment leads to bias."
"Yes," Salith said, "and bias leads to responsibility."
Murmurs spread.
"You fear that humans will choose each other over the council," another voice said.
Salith did not deny it. "They will," she said, "and they will choose others as well." "That is the point," the speaker intervened. "High Envoy, this discussion is not about affection. It is about governance."
Salith inclined her head. "Governance without connection is control,
not guidance." The chamber fell into uneasy silence. Elias watched from the outer ring. He was not allowed to speak. Not because he was unimportant, but because his words now carried weight the council was not ready to handle. That realization unsettled him more than exclusion ever could. Outside the chamber, tension grew. Some species quietly increased cooperation with humans despite council hesitation. Others pulled back, afraid of scrutiny. Trade slowed in certain sectors. Diplomatic channels grew crowded with second-guessing. The galaxy was not breaking, but it was straining. Elias was summoned to meet with a group of junior council aides, beings who did not yet hold power, but supported those who did. "We need to understand something," one of them said carefully. "If the council rules against deeper human integration—"
"What will humanity do?" Elias answered honestly. "We'll adapt."
"How?" another asked.
"We always do," Elias said. "Some of us will be angry.
Some will leave. Some will try again later."
"And you?"
the aide asked. Elias looked at them. "I'll stay as long as I'm allowed." That answer unsettled them more than defiance would have. A private message reached Salith that same cycle. It came from an elder of her own species. "You are pushing too hard," the message said. "The council may force a choice." Salith closed the message slowly. A choice. Between tradition and trust. Between position and conviction. Between safety and meaning. She sought Elias out immediately. "They may attempt to separate us," she said simply. Elias absorbed the words. "Legally?" "Yes," she replied. "Politically?" He nodded. "I figured." She studied him closely. "You are not afraid?" "I am," Elias said. "Just not of that." "What are you afraid of?" she asked. "That they'll convince you it wasn't worth it," he said. Salith's glow brightened sharply. "They cannot." The council's next move came in the form of a proposal. The union between Salith and Elias would be allowed, but stripped of political consequence, symbolic only, no elevation of humanity, no precedent. A compromise. Many supported it. It preserves dignity, they argued. It avoids disruption. Salith read the proposal in silence. Elias watched her carefully.
"It lets them keep things the same," he said. "Yes," she replied.
While pretending they changed, she brought the proposal before the council. "I refuse," she said. The reaction was immediate. "You would risk fragmentation," a delegate demanded.
"Yes," Salith said calmly. "If unity requires denial."
The speaker's symbols flared. High Envoy, your role grants influence, not immunity. Salith inclined her head. Then remove it? The chamber froze.
You would relinquish your position? The speaker asked.
I would, Salith said. If that is the cost of honesty. A ripple of shock passed through the chamber. Elias stood slowly, heart pounding, but still silent. This was her choice, not his. The speaker conferred rapidly with multiple elders. Data streamed. Probabilities shifted. Removing Salith would fracture Virene representation. Supporting her would accelerate change. Opposing her would expose fear. There was no safe path. Outside the chamber, news of the standoff spread. Other species waited, watched. Calculated. Some remembered times when humans had stood by unpopular allies. Others wondered if this was one of those moments. Hours passed. Finally, the speaker spoke. The council will recess, it announced. This matter exceeds procedural boundaries. As the chamber emptied, Elias and Salith remained behind for a moment. You didn't have to do that, Elias said quietly.
Yes?
Salith replied. I did.
He looked at her. If this costs you everything, she interrupted gently.
It gains me truth. In the days that followed, something unexpected happened. Species that had remained silent began speaking. A trade consortium formally objected to limiting human mediators. A scientific alliance submitted data showing increased success in mixed teams with humans. A minor but ancient culture sent a message to the council archives. We survived because we bonded across difference, it read.
Do not forget this lesson again. Pressure mounted. Not from humans.
From everyone else. The council found itself in a position it had not faced in centuries. Its traditions were no longer universally trusted. And at the center of that discomfort stood two figures who had never demanded power. One who chose, and one who stayed. The final decision loomed. Not just about a union, but about whether the galaxy would continue hiding behind fear or step forward into something uncertain, shared, and deeply human. The final session of the Interstellar Council did not feel like an ending. It felt like a moment where everyone understood that whatever happened next would echo for a very long time. The chamber was full in a way it rarely was. Not just seats occupied, but attention-focused. Delegates who once sent proxies now appeared in person. Observers who usually remained silent leaned forward, watching closely. Elias stood beside Salith at the outer ring. He was not nervous in the way he once would have been. There was no single outcome he was hoping for anymore. Whatever the council decided, something had already changed. He could feel it in the way people looked at him, not as a test subject, not as a risk, but as something real, a person. The council speaker activated the central field. Light spread across the chamber, steady and neutral.
This session will conclude the human evaluation, the speaker said,
and determine the status of the proposed union. Silence followed. Before deliberation, the speaker continued, the council will hear one final statement. Several delegates assumed it would be Salith. Instead, the speaker turned toward Elias. Elias Rowan of Earth, it said. You may speak. A ripple of surprise passed through the chamber. Elias did not move at first. He looked at Salith. She inclined her head once. He stepped forward. He did not prepare a speech. He did not try to summarize humanity or justify himself. He spoke the way he always had, plainly. I know some of you are afraid, Elias said. Not of humans doing harm, but of humans caring too much. A few delegates shifted uncomfortably. We don't pretend to be perfect, he continued. We argue. We mess up. We hurt each other. But we don't stop trying to matter to one another. He paused, choosing his words carefully. If you decide today that humans shouldn't have a deeper role here, we'll accept that. We won't fight you. We'll go back to learning, to building, to helping where we're allowed.
He looked around the chamber. But understand this, he said.
Connection doesn't wait for permission. It already happened.
He gestured gently toward the gathered species. You've worked with us, talked with us, trusted us with small things. And you saw what happened. He lowered his hand. You don't have to choose us, Elias said. You already did. You're just deciding whether to admit it. He stepped back. The silence that followed was not tense. It was thoughtful. Saleth spoke next, her voice calm, steady, unyielding. My people measure time in long arcs, she said. We survive by choosing what will last. She looked directly at the speaker. I chose Elias not because he is human, she said, but because he chooses. Every day. Without certainty. Without guarantee. She turned slowly, addressing the whole chamber. That is not weakness, she said. That is continuity. The speaker dimmed slightly, then brightened again. The council will now deliberate, it announced. The waiting was long. Not because there was argument, but because there was realization. Delegates reviewed records again, not searching for flaws but patterns. Successes that once seemed small now formed a clear shape. Failures that had been blamed on chance revealed causes, long ignored. Human presence had not replaced authority, it had softened its edges, and in doing so, it had strengthened outcomes. The speaker reconvened the session. The council has reached a decision, it said. The chamber leaned inward. First, the speaker continued, the union between High Envoy Saleth of the Vereen and Elias Rowan of Earth is hereby recognized in full. A wave of quiet reactions spread, relief, surprise, acceptance. Elias felt a tightness in his chest loosen. Saleth's glow warmed beside him. Second, the speaker said, the council acknowledges that humanity's demonstrated capacity for cross-species bonding, persistence, and adaptive cooperation represents a stabilizing force, not a destabilizing one. Some delegates exhaled. Others closed their sensory fields briefly. Therefore, the speaker concluded, humanity is granted foundational partner status. The word settled slowly. Foundational partner, not a junior member, not a provisional subject. A species whose presence shaped systems rather than followed them. No one cheered, no one protested. They simply absorbed it. Elias did not smile right away. He felt something deeper than victory. Responsibility. The speaker raised one final symbol. This status does not grant dominance, it said. It grants expectation. Saleth inclined her head. That is understood. The session ended without ceremony. No applause. No dramatic exit. Just a quiet understanding that the galaxy had taken a step it could not undo. In the days that followed, the effects were immediate, but subtle. Requests for human mediators became official. Mixed species councils added human seats. Not to lead, but to listen and translate between ways of thinking. Training programs began exchanging methods. Humans did not rush to fill power gaps. They filled spaces between. Elias received messages from Earth at last. His family. Old colleagues. People he had not spoken to in years. None of them asked about status. They asked if he was okay. He answered honestly. Yes, he said. I think we're doing something right. Saleth resigned her formal position as High Envoy weeks later, not in protest, but in completion. Her role had been to guide a transition. It was done. She and Elias chose to remain on the council station for a time, not as symbols, but as participants. They shared meals with species that did not eat. They listened to history spoken in light and sound.
They learned how many civilizations had failed, not from war, but from refusing to change together. One evening, standing near the same transparent wall where they once spoke quietly, Elias looked out at the stars. "Do you think they'll regret it?" he asked. Salith considered.
"Yes," she said. "Sometimes."
He smiled faintly. "That's fair. But they will not undo it," she continued, "because it works." Across the galaxy, something else began to happen. When crises emerged, the question was no longer who is strongest. It became who will stay. More often than not, the answer involved humans, not because they were heroic, but because they showed up, and kept showing up. The Interstellar Council archived the evaluation under a simple summary. Humanity demonstrates resilience through attachment, stability through care, continuity through choice. It was the shortest conclusion in Council history. Long after the headlines faded, long after the shock wore off, the galaxy adjusted to a new constant. Humans were not everywhere, but they were where it mattered. And the species that once shocked the Council by being chosen discovered something quietly extraordinary. They had not conquered the stars. They had connected them, and deep within the ancient Council systems, an unspoken realization continued to take shape. Humanity was not reshaping the galaxy by force. They were doing something far more unsettling. They were making it rethink itself.